opportunity to introduce Gemma because I work with her on a, almost daily basis. Our offices are about 4,000 miles apart, so we email a lot and we talk once a month, and then we see each other in person once a year. And it's always a pleasure. She locks us up in a room on the 10th floor of Penguin and shows us 100, 200 books, 200 books this year. And it's always a real pleasure to work with her on the selection process, the pricing, the negotiations on pricing, and then the production of the books to make sure we have them in the month that we need to mail them in. And so I'm going to pass it over to Gemma Jennings. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me and for inviting my colleague Leanne down to attend your conference. It's been great so far, really enjoying it. I'm Gemma. As Sam says, I work at Penguin Random House, and I look after the Imagination Library here in the UK on the publishing side of things. It's actually really lovely to be here, not least because Nottingham is my hometown, and I'm born and bred here. And I'm really thrilled that local children now benefit from this incredible scheme, and also I have managed to avoid a 5 a.m. start coming up from London, so I feel great. So today I'm here to talk about the role that Penguin plays as a publishing partner, and I'm essentially going to take you through the journey of each book from the actual selection process and the pre-selection process all the way through to the books arriving through the letterboxes of the children enrolled in the scheme. And there's quite a lot of stages in between that, unless you're really familiar with publishing, you might not be aware of. So directly after me, I believe there is a short break, and I'll be around if you have any questions about the work that you're doing in support of the Imagination Library and how Penguin work with you. Okay, so to give you a little bit of an overview of Penguin Random House, we are the biggest publisher in the UK, and across our adult and children's divisions, we publish roughly 15,000 new books every year. We publish some of the most well-known authors in the world, from the likes of James Patterson and Marion Keyes to John le Carré and Jamie Oliver. And our children's division is home to some of the best-loved authors and children's brand in the world, and includes the like of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, The Snowman, The Wonderful Roald Dahl, and Peter Rabbit, just to name a few. We publish under Ladybird, which is baby and toddler age up to preschool and nursery, Puffin, which is infant and primary, and through, right way through to secondary school, and then Penguin, which is where some of our young adult titles sit as well. Within my team, Penguin work to connect our books to a non-traditional audience, so that's anything outside of the local bookseller channels like Waterstones or W.H. Smith's. And our job is essentially to make sure that as many children as possible grow up able to read, with access to brilliant books, and as excited about the world of books and reading as we all are in this room. Working with the Imagination Library team, my job is to gather and present all of our very best children's books and picture books to the committee, and then once those selections are made, I'll work on the process with our editorial teams and our production teams to get the books programme ready. So, first a word on the pre-selection process. As many of you may know, the programme for the year is chosen by the Imagination Library team of child literacy experts, who I'll talk a little bit more about later on in the presentation. But before we can get everyone in a room together to review all the books, we have to gather together as comprehensive a selection as possible to capture the real breadth and range of our children's publishing. To get this process started, I'll meet with the key editors working exclusively on the picture book list. We have roughly 10 children's editors involved in the Imagination Library, one of which is our designated Imagination Library champion, Joe Marriott, who sadly he can't be here today, but he's a really, really integral part of the scheme. So together, Joe and I will look at some of the core themes of the Imagination Library, a love of reading and learning, a regard for diversity of people, their roles and culture, an environment, and a promotion of self-esteem, confidence, and an appreciation of art and aesthetics. This is always our starting point for the long list, because these are really the books that capture the essence of what Dolly Parton was trying to do all the way back in 1995 when this began. We'll talk about the range and the variety. Do we have a mix of classic, breakout, and currently popular titles? Are our authors and illustrators a mix of established and prize-winning, and also new and debut talent from across the country? Do we have diverse voices from the whole of Great Britain as well as the rest of the world? And the answer is yes, absolutely. We'll put forward authors and illustrators like Quentin Blake and Raymond Briggs, alongside authors we're publishing for the very first time, like Fred Blunt, and international authors like Linley Dodd. We'll also include TV series tie-in publishing, like In the Night Garden, as well as factual and educational titles aimed at getting children ready for nursery and ready for school, and that are created in conjunction with the UK school curriculum. We'll put in books that are brand new or not even yet published, and books that have been around for years and years and years and are out of print in the book market. And for the titles that aren't widely available, we'll get our designers to recreate books if they're completely defunct in the current market, and then the committee can review those. And excitingly, although Penguin and Random House merged in 2013, this is the first year of the programme, so the book's currently in the programme at the moment, where we've had titles from across the group. So incredible evergreen characters like Elmer, that many of us remember from our own childhood being read to, now have a place in the programme. And for the upcoming selection, which is next week, we've got even more titles from this list, and we've really delved deep into the archive to bring some beautiful books to the table from authors and illustrators who are centred around diversity and an appreciation of different cultures. As well as looking at the content, we'll also look at the different formats we can offer. Board books, books with tactiles or cutouts, case-bound books and paperback books. And for the earlier age group, it's really important that we provide these sturdier formats, and we'll balance out the expense of doing that, of the more costly formats, with the cheaper to produce paperbacks that are kind of typical of the older age groups. And by the end of this process, our aim is to have gathered over 200 titles, as Sam said, for the 0 to 5 age group that encompass a really vast variety of themes. And then it's really over to the committee, who we lock up on the 10th floor of the Strand offices for 2 days to read through every single book out loud, 200 books, to really get a sense of the tone, the readability, and to debate what should and shouldn't make the cut. And that is often quite a lively debate. But the process isn't as grueling as it sounds, and we do provide tea and cake and the occasional break. Some of our committee I can see are here today, and we are so grateful for their support, because these guys are really the expertise behind the selection of the books. Their background in the surface of local councils, UK schools, public libraries, professional literacy boards, award bodies, festival boards, other book-giving programmes such as Book Trust, I could go on, make them the absolute authority in this field, and we're really lucky to have such a highly qualified team on board with the Imagination Library. So I appreciate this graphic is very difficult to see, but I have copies of it if anyone would like to see, and this is all about kind of what the team are looking for when they're reading through the books. This graphic was put together by the Imagination Library team, and we're looking at the developmental stage of each age group for the books. So, in group 1, for children under 1, we'll include books that are kind of highly visual, little to no text. They'll be exclusively board books, so that children can practice turning the pages, get that hand-eye coordination down, and so that they're durable, they can be flung out of a pram, they can be chewed on and drooled on and all sorts. And often the committee will choose books with cutouts and tactile elements as well, touch and feel, all that really important first concept stuff. In group 2, for children turning 1, many of these themes will be continued. That we might introduce some first concepts, my body, numbers, so on, ABCs, and there might also be some photography in those books as well, and kind of that face recognition that we talked about here is so important. In the next group for children turning 2, there is always some rhythm and rhyme and element to the book, and we'll see characters like Harry McClary from Donaldson's Dairy start to crop up. In this group, there's often a focus on characters, and maybe even we start to introduce some issues to resolve in the plot as well. So this year we introduced the fabulous Sophie Henn's character, Pom Pom, who is a grumpy panda who wakes up on the wrong side of bed and finds that things go from bad to worse. In groups 4 and 5, for ages 3 to 4, the stories are again more complex, with issues and resolution, heroes and villains, and even humour. The team will look at the characters. Do we really care about them? Do we grow to love them? Are they memorable? Can we laugh at them or with them? And are they reflective of the world around us? So you'll see in the programme many of these characters. Bridget Fidget, who just can't sit still, or poor old worried Arthur. The multicolour patchwork elephant Elmer. Charlie and Lola, who completely, absolutely, definitely, honestly can look after your dog. And in the final group, when the children are reaching school age, we'll look at school readiness, that kind of super important element, include some science, non-fiction titles, books that teach manners and acceptance and about gender and ethnicity and families, and books that introduce really children to the wider world around them. And then once we're confident that we've got that fantastic mix of books for every age and stage, we'll start narrowing that long list down, and we'll thin it down to the 70 titles that you'll see make up the programme next year. And then this is the part where the work really starts for me. So I'll go away and work out what books need to be adjusted format-wise to meet the Imagination Library specifications, which is essentially so that the books can fit through the letterboxes, they're lightweight, the postage costs are very slim. So here I have an example of the ways in which we might customise the book. And it wouldn't be publishing if I didn't carry books around with me at all times, so excuse that. This is a fantastic book called the Scullabone Islands series. It's called 5 Minutes to Bed, and this is the regular edition. This is the edition that's widely available in the trade, which you'll see is kind of large, as picture books tend to be. And this is the Imagination Library edition, which we have shrunk down ever so slightly, keeping all the kind of original artwork and so on. We have here this Ladybird First Concept Numbers book. This is what we call a case-bound board book. It might be really difficult to see kind of the difference in the books here, but you can see this one is much chunkier. And what we've done is we've decased the board book. We've kept the contents exactly the same, but we've slimmed it down, and it's much more lightweight to take. And honestly, you definitely won't be able to see this from here, but you can see we've actually changed the book from whiteboard to greyboard, which is a really minor change, but we printed about 5,000 copies of this book, and that saved us a couple of £100, which is obviously super important to the imagination. And then as well as changing the format, you'll see from here that our lovely team designer, Lynette, has added the Imagination Library logo here. We've also removed the RRP from the books. We've added not for resale. That's so that they don't end up anywhere that they shouldn't. And then this is a really interesting touch here that we've started to do more. In the US, they do it on quite a lot of their books, and it's reading tips, which are really fantastic. They're flaps added, so we've got a little bit of information about the Imagination Library, and then tips for reading the book with your children. So that's kind of, it can give parents and carers some reading tips to further sort of explore the story. They're created by our editorial team. They're really imaginative, and they're great if your child is demanding that you read the book for the 17th time that week. So once we've worked out what changes we need to make to all the books and how much the production of the books will cost, we'll then speak to our authors, introduce the programme if they're not already familiar with it, and make sure that they're happy with the changes that are going to be made. In most instances, we'll also confirm that the royalty payment will be slightly less, which is something that tends to be agreed beforehand in the contract, but we have to make sure and double check with them. And this can take a little bit of time, especially if it's the very busy author that we're dealing with or an agent that we're going through. So then once this is all sewn up, we'll work out how long we need to print the books. As you'll see, we print most of our books in the Far East, so we need to calculate, we've got in my version it does slide along there and you can see it journey. But we do print in the Far East, we ship the books, and so when we're scheduling the books, we decide all the books this time of the year, and the first books are delivered to the warehouse in December, so we really have to get our skates on for those earlier slots. If possible, we'll take the books that are the trade stock and position them in the early slots to give us plenty of time to order in any materials we need to, especially for the tactile books, so you'll see most of them coming later on in the year. And there we have it, books printed and given a new life by the Imagination Library. So I wanted to pause to take a second to look at the numbers, because I think that will really sort of help give a sense of the scale of the operation. This year we have a total of 40 Penguin authors and illustrators partaking in the scheme. But in the past 4 years, Penguin Random House UK has printed over 1 million books for the programme, which is just amazing, a huge number. And last year alone, we printed over 370,000, so you can really see how that's growing. And with even more councils this year, we're set to print even more, which is just fantastic. With an operation this big and growing, we really have to sort of plan in advance to make sure everything runs super smooth. And that's where the projections from the councils really, really help. we need to make the decision early of how many books to print and what to do with that stock. So that's fantastic help that you guys provide those for us. And also important is that we keep on the right side of the law, which may sound dramatic, but as a publisher, we have to be really, really careful that we're protecting the intellectual property of our authors and our illustrators. So I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about copyright law. And please don't try and fall asleep at this stage. So I won't go into too much detail around the fabulous world, but I will take you through some do's and don'ts that hopefully will be memorable and that you can apply to your time working with the Imagination Library. So if you're creating materials around the programme, whether it be preparing a presentation or a poster or writing a tweet or a Facebook post, sending out a newsletter or even entertaining children at an event, you may want to use some of the assets from the book, which is great, and please do, they're fantastic assets. But if you do plan to do so, you do need to check with us first. There are some guidelines for use. So to seek approval, you just need to, via the Imagination Library team, Emma and Kirsten, just request a form, send us a copy of the assets, and fill out the form saying what the assets are going to be used for, and then send it back to us, and we'll get that request approved in-house. So to summarise a couple of key points, do use an image of the cover of the book, and we can supply that for you in really high resolution, but please do only use the cover image. Don't sort of pull out any of the characters, we might not have the rights to do so, and don't change the cover in any way if possible. Do check with us each time you want to use something. Approval is given for one-time use, so just keep a regular dialogue there, and don't give the assets that we give to you to anyone else to use. Do only use images of the books in the current programme, and please don't sell anything that has these images or our penguin logo on, and don't replicate readings of the whole book. So it's fine to do snapshots of reading with children, but the entire book online is something that we're not allowed to approve. And then finally, do remember to acknowledge the author, the illustrator, and us, the publisher, in everything you do. It can just be sort of a small line of acknowledgement to say thank you and to recognise the work that's gone into creating the asset. But if you do have any specific queries on the rather scary process of copyrights, please do let me know. We can discuss in the break. I've got a copy of the form if anyone would like to see it. And it's always better to ask just to be on the safe side. So that's pretty much my piece here done. But before we do head for a break, I just wanted to end on a note that I think really captures why Penguin Random House is involved with the Imagination Library and why we as a publisher feel so incredibly privileged to be a part of it. And I should warn you that when I gave a version of this presentation to our children's division, I did actually reduce one of the colleagues, my colleagues in the children's division, to tears. So please do try and keep a stiff upper lip, because otherwise our American colleagues will think us very, very un-British. So this is a piece of feedback from a single parent, and it said, "Without the Imagination Library, I would not be able to support my daughter with such a variety of authors and stories." Okay, thank you.